A lot of people don't believe in demonic possession nowadays, but some are forced to. Not because of bias, but because they've seen it with their own eyes. Listen to the story.
So I came home one day and, I was headed down to the basement for whatever reason, probably to chop wood or whatever. And I see my mother, she's bending over and she's got a hacksaw and she's trying to hack the chain off the freezer. And the first thing I said to her, it was the only thing I could think of, was I just yelled out, "Hey!" And she was all bent over and she just cocked her head and she looked at me and she snarled. And her hair, because this woman didn't take care of herself, as you can imagine. She stunk like hell. Her hair was all overgrown. Her bangs were like down to here. All of her teeth were all broken and serrated so bad that her tongue, she would wag her tongue at me from time to time, go like this at me. And all her tongue was serrated and bleeding all on the sides of the edge from all her broken teeth. All her teeth were all broken and chipped, the front ones everywhere. So she turned around, she snarled at me, and she dropped the hacksaw and then went running upstairs. And I went to chase her upstairs because, like you mentioned, this was it for me. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm going to have a breakdown. And I didn't even know what a breakdown or anything was that. All I knew is that it had to be her or me. Somebody was going to get killed sooner or later. And she ran up the stairs and I chased her up the stairs. And at this point, I'm like 16. I'm like 5'10". I weigh like 125 pounds, 130 pounds. I'm nimble, I'm fast and quick. She beat me upstairs. She ran into her room. She slammed the door so hard that all the windows in the house were reverberating like that. I could hear the front windows pulsating. I thought they were going to explode. And I went to open her door. She was pressing up against the door. The door was bowing, and I could hear it cracking. She was like testing the capacity of the door. And I thought to myself, well, if she's pressing on the door, she must be, with her back against the door, pushing with her feet, because that's the stance of power. You wouldn't stand in front of it and go like that because you get pushed back. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna open this door, and I'm just sitting there waiting. When I can hear her breathing, she's like, kind of like breathing, snarling, gnarling. I mean, this isn't my mother. This isn't my mother. And I'm waiting for a minute, and then I hear the cracks kind of go as she releases the pressure off the door. And I rub my hands together. I remember that so vividly because I was sweating. I rubbed my hands together, and I went to open the door, and the doorknob was turning. So I turned it, and I whipped it open real quick, and immediately our eyes met. We must have been maybe 3 feet away from each other, and they were just pools of black. They were pools of black. My mother had hazel eyes, or basically green eyes. They were more on the green side than the brown side. So they really stood out, So when you looked at my mother, you could see, wow, you got really nice eyes. And I saw nothing. All I saw was the glint of the reflection of light on her eyes. They were just black balls. And, I've read stuff that people have seen that kind of stuff, and it sounds so stupid and so cliche, but I don't know how else to explain it. There was no pupil. There was no iris. There was no white. It was all black. And at that moment, she had a handful of pennies she had in her hand, and she whipped the pennies at my face, and I turned around and I began running. She ran after me. I was just bolted. I went around the corner. I opened the door and I ran outside, and I ran out onto the street. And then I could hear slam. She slammed her bedroom door again. She went into her bedroom, slammed her door, and all the windows again went. And I could see this from the driveway. I was looking at the front window thinking, oh my gosh, that thing's going to just pulsate like a speaker and just snap and just bust straight out. Anyway, I was trying to process what I saw in the driveway. And I couldn't even say my name. I was trying to say a word. I was like, you know that that's real deep trauma when you can't get a hold of your speech, and you can't control your own body. You know, you know that that's really deep. That's a fear. That's a deep fear. But when I was standing out there, I realized that my dad was in town. I think it was on a Saturday, so he had to have been in town, and I knew where he was. So fortunately, our telephone used to be right inside. You know, you go through the mud room, and then you open the door to the living room, and it was right there on the wall. So as soon as you open the door, you could just reach your hand in and grab it, and it had a long cord on it. So I reached in, make sure the coast was clear. I grabbed the phone and I went outside on the patio and I called my dad. And when the lady answered the phone, I was I couldn't say anything. I couldn't say anything. I was like, and I heard the lady scream my father's name. He comes to the phone. I once again, I can't say anything. And he says, okay, I'm coming. I'm coming. He knew it was me. So he gets home, he pulls in the driveway. He's like, what's going on? What happened? I can't say anything. I'm still like this. So he begins to head toward the door, the front door. I'm following right behind him because I'm like, this is it. This has got to end. Soon as we both get in the door, my mother comes out from behind the wall, jumps my dad. Now we're talking about an obese woman here. She's 5 feet or between 5 feet and 5'2". She is very small, but obese. She jumps him, takes my dad, who's 5'8", and in the prime of his life back then, takes him to the ground, throws him to the ground, jumps on top of him, and starts scratching his face and howling and gnarling like an animal. I'm like watching it like, ugh, she's going to kill my dad. And my dad happens to get up, and then he runs outside. And I run out after him. And I'm standing in the driveway with my dad, who was just defeated horribly. She threw him down like he weighed nothing, and started scratching and clawing at his face. And my dad couldn't say anything. He was out there, like, wow, that's not my wife. That's not the woman I married. And so the phone was still outside. My dad called the police department. The police called the mental institution, and all of these people came out. And my mother was talking to the policeman like normal. He was like, so what happened here? He goes, oh, nothing happened here, officer. I'm not exactly sure why you're here. And I'm hearing my mother talk in a normal female, feminine voice. And I'm hearing her, and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm standing in the driveway ready to freaking blow my brains out because I'm so confused as to what is going on. Anyway, a couple of minutes later, they take her away. And I believe when they took her away, they shielded me. Now that I remember that, they kind of shielded me off. And maybe they didn't want me to see my mother in a straitjacket. I don't know what it was. But I believe that they did that. I remember not being able to see her, wanting to see her, but not being able to see her. And they brought her out in a straitjacket, and they took her away. And they took her back to the mental institution.